Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's very special Executive Roundtable. This is Executive Roundtable Part 2. We're featuring transportation leaders, both national and state leaders, who are going to talk about the issues of the day. Now, this is a follow-up. This is actually a little bit of a, we call it like, it's like almost like a summer sequel. You know, summers are known for their sequels, Jurassic Park and all these others, blockbusters. This is a blockbuster one. Sometimes the sequels are better than the original. Godfather 2 is kind of roundly recognized as better than Godfather 1. So anyway, today we're going to be hearing from the same leaders, minus one. Marisa couldn't join us from Texas today. They just came off of a massive conference, by the way. Congratulations. But we're going to be talking about a lot of the same issues, but unlike last time where we kind of set the table, our leaders were amazing that we had as panelists on some of the issues that they're facing. Today, we're going to get into a little bit more of the solutions of how to solve some of these issues. And so I'm going to encourage you as you're logging in to ask questions, and feel free to share tips. If you hear something that resonates with you, go in the Q&A section there and tell us, if you have a question or if you have a tip that's worked for you, because this is, again, the whole idea of these best practices webinars are to tap into the expertise that is you, including our panelists, about what's worked and maybe what hasn't worked, and maybe what works in one area maybe doesn't always work in another area, or maybe timing is an issue as well. So please do that. And just to make sure that that Q&A box is working, feel free to tap in there right now. Tell us where you're logging in from, or what state you represent. You want to put your town too, that's great. I always love seeing that thing light up. So just tell us where you're all right. Good morning from Harlingen. Now, Harlingen is where? What state is that? All right, so Melly, you are, by the way, the very first person on there. Texas, okay. Grove City, Ohio, Texas, very good. Before we get into me announcing who the panelists today, I just wanted to mention to you that today, this is our first really public forum to share the winners of the very first Top Transportation Teams Award. We announced it earlier this month in a press release. It's been in some media as well, and they are going to be receiving the awards next month, July, at STN Expo Reno. And so here they are. We got 4 different states represented, and the winners are in the over 100 category: Franklin Township Community School Corporation in Indiana, Klein Independent School District in Texas, and Garland Independent School District in Texas. And the winners in the fewer than 100 employee category is Marshall Public Schools out of Michigan, Pembroke Central School District in New York, and South Louis Central School District in New York. So Dave Christopher, one of our panelists, you should be very happy. We have 2 winners from New York, and if Marisa was on, we had 2 from Texas. That was not planned. We didn't know that when we scheduled these, but so anyway, so that's kind of cool. So I want to congratulate our winners, and there will be ongoing, we're going to be bringing them on as panelists down the road and learn from them what they have done to become a top transportation team, because really they're dealing with many of the issues that we've been discussing during these best practices webinars. Tony's actually going to be moderating a panel at STN Expo in Reno with these winners, so that's going to be really great. So I'm hoping everyone can participate. I'm seeing Philly, I'm seeing Casper, Wyoming, Montana, awesome. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to, and also want to remind you, by the way, if you did not see the very first part of this webinar series, that you can find all of our best practices webinars on our YouTube channel, and you can easily find that off of Transfinder's homepage. So it's transfinder.com. You'll see the YouTube icon at the very top. You just click that, and you could watch last month's, and any of them actually, and then maybe what we talk about today will make a little bit more sense, but I think you can sort of just dive right in. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our panelists. And if you can move to the next, there we go. Thank you so much. So Bridget, Bill Andexler, he's with the Education Services Center of Northeast Ohio. So Bill, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Dave Christopher with NIAPT, New York Association for Pupil Transportation. He can kind of thump his chest a little bit because he's got two of the top transportation teams as his members. Ronna Weber with National Association of State Directors of Pupil Transportation. You can also take some bragging rights here because you're national, so they're all your top transportation teams. And Molly McGee-Hewitt with National Association for Pupil Transportation. I know she's logging in, so we'll get to her, I'm sure, when she joins us. So, Bridget, if you want to go to the next slide for a moment, I want to kind of set the table a little bit. Last month, we talked about a bunch of, we call them hot button solutions. So I decided let's, we'll call these cool solutions. Obviously, a lot of these things, there's no, definitive answers to everything, and driver shortage is, an ongoing thing. But I know that there are definitely some tricks that people have learned to help mitigate some of the issues. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about improving morale, recruitment, retirements, and just the changes in staffing, leadership. I want to talk, actually, we didn't get into this last month, and I do want to get into this during our webinar. I want to talk to what you have done as leaders, how you've changed, how you, are there new skills that you've had to add? Are there things that your leadership style, has it changed? Challenging times can, you realize a different type of leader is needed, and I got to become more like that in this situation. Addressing student management issues head on, etc. So without further ado, we're going to start. I want to, before I have you all introduce yourselves and tell us about your who you are and what district you're in, I want to ask a quick poll question, and then we're going to get right into it. So Bridget, if you could run the poll question. The question is, how would you rate the morale in your transportation operation? Because much of what we're talking about today has to do with morale. So take a second and answer that question. How is morale in your organization? And we'll give it a couple of seconds. And plug it in, and then Bridget, you want to give us those results. Okay, no bads. Well, that's good. Bridget, go ahead. You want to tell us?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, no bads. Pretty fairly good. 46% fair, 46% good, and 13% great.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to go to the panelists. We're going to ask them a little bit about, first of all, Bill, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about, how you are definitely an expert in technology and transportation. And then we'll go to Dave and Ronna. So, and then hopefully we can get Molly in here as well.
So I've been doing this almost 25 years as a supervisor, and my last assignment was I was working for Akron Public Schools in Ohio, which is the 5th largest public school district in Ohio. So fortunately, about 2 months ago, I was able to be hired at the Educational Service Center as a transportation consultant, and I'm able to go out now and support districts with the knowledge that I've had, the best practices that I've worked on for the last 20 some years. So it's I've always been doing it for the years, trying to help districts, and trying to juggle both positions. But now I'm strictly now at the ESC to help districts, help the transportation departments.
That's great. You've been there now how long in this role? Not that long.
About 2 months.
And are you already feeling like you're acclimated in that role?
I do. Right now, for the transition, because Akron is a fairly larger district, it took a while for the transition for the new person to come in. So we did have a contract with them that technically I'm still with them until September. So I'm helping them out with the transition until September. But I do have about 15 schools right now that I'm working with. And this time of the year in Ohio, we have a T2 report that will be coming due in August, at the end of August. And that's what we need to help our districts with, is to make sure they're not leaving money on the table, basically.
Very good. David, tell us a little about yourself and your role.
Yeah, good afternoon, Rick, and thanks for continuing on with these best practices webinars. We started these a few years ago, and they're still going strong. So thanks for doing that. Thanks, Transfinder, for doing that. I'm a retired transportation director. I retired from the yellow bus operation industry in 2014, and I'm now the executive director of the State Association, New York Association for Pupil Transportation. Very proud of that I was able to do this. And we're actually preparing for our summer conference and moving that right along. Yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm glad to be on this webinar and share some information and learn. That's the other part of these webinars. You learn so much from people when you participate in these.
That's great. Thanks so much, David. Yeah, I can't believe it's been over 3 years now.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
And Ronna, last but not least.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I come at this from a totally different career path. I was a federal lobbyist for the National School Transportation Association for a number of years. I like to say I started when I was 4 and shifted over, became their executive director for 5 years. And I've been with NASDIPS now for 2. I've been involved in some way in the school transportation industry for almost 30 years. And it's a great industry. We all are here for all the right reasons. So delighted to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Great, thank you. So for those who are attending, please feel free to punch into your thoughts. And I'm going to ask a question to everybody before I get into your leadership styles and just how you've adapted. Are you surprised by the survey results? I mean, there was no bad morale. I mean, I know it's probably a smaller survey sample, but your thoughts on that, and then we'll get into the next question, just being what has worked for you in the past in terms of improving morale? Because I know you probably have all had a role in that, but are you surprised by that there are no bads and fair is sometimes fair is fair, that's the best we can do. Thoughts on that, anybody?
Yeah, I'm surprised that there were no bad. Morale I would say was fair or good before the pandemic. After the pandemic, I have noticed that the morale has gone down quite a bit on there. It just seems to be a lot more stress on everybody's lives, whether it's at work or is it in their personal life. And but I was very surprised that there was no bad out there on there.
Yeah.
And how I try to help with the morale, first of all, try to cut down as much stress as possible with my department. Whatever I can handle. The drivers need to feel that their concerns are being addressed, whether it's student behavior or just getting the buses fixed if they find something wrong with the bus. Sometimes garages don't handle the issues with the buses and things, and they don't feel like it's being handled. So that's how I try to improve the morale with that.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah,
David.
I would agree with Bill. I was surprised at the results too, because we do hear a lot of stories about the concerns about stress and certainly the new challenges. Students are acting out because they're back in school and on buses, after a couple of years of not being, with their friends in a classroom setting. And of course, the driver shortage issue puts a lot of stress on everyone. So, but I think, here's the other part of this that we need to think about is school transportation people solve problems, and they're figuring this out. And they're actually running more efficient operations and doing what they need to do to get the job done. So there's certain satisfaction in that too, right? When you're running an operation and you're figuring out how to cover runs with fewer people, and or you're a driver. Drivers, there's always a group of drivers who will step up and say, you know, I'll do that run, I'll do this run, I'll add stuff to my daily responsibilities to make it happen. So I think there's some satisfaction in that as well.
That's a good point about them being problem solvers too. I like that.
Yeah.
Not seeing the glass as necessarily half empty.
Right.
I'm going to ask you a question, Dave. I'm going to throw it out to the attendees too to tell us what you do to improve morale. Bill, you already kind of mentioned trying to take things off of people if you can ease their burden a little bit. If you want to get more specific about that too. But for those who are joining us, please tell us in the question box there what you do to help reduce or improve morale, I guess, or reduce stress. Dave, what have you done when you were in the hot seat as a transportation supervisor?
Well, you know, I always tried to be open, you know, to the, you know, folks in the department. You know, I always had my door open, and we tried to respond to issues as quickly as possible. You know, we just good management practices is, you know, in terms of openness and communication and trying to meet the needs of the people who are right out there with the kids every day. I think, in fairness, it was easier for me because it was before COVID. You know, I look at what some of the folks are doing today in, you know, running these operations, and it's a challenge. Your skill set has changed, needs to change from what I experienced, you know, before I left the business. What we do with our association is, you know, we're putting on a conference, and it's going to be a lot of learning, but it's also going to be some fun. So people come and, you know, relax a little bit. So, you know, hopefully that helps some of the stress and, you know, concerns that our leaders have. And hopefully they leave here refreshed with a renewed sense of getting the job done and doing it as positively and effectively as possible.
That's great. Before I get to you, Ronna, I'm going to read a couple of answers here. Frank says, Driver Appreciation Day, gifts and food for all employees. Dave, how many times have we talked about food here?
Yeah.
I think Harvey talked about his world famous breakfasts.
Yeah.
Dennis talks about remaining approachable, which I think Dave just mentioned, and being upbeat. Project a can-do attitude to meet the needs of our drivers. Sometimes, I mean, I remember one time working at a place that was not Transfinder, by the way. I was used to be a newspaper reporter. That was a little bit gloomy sometimes. And I remember feeling like I almost had to put on a persona of being upbeat. Like before I walked in the door, I remember I used to go in the back way. You had to climb up some stairs. So I would take the stairs up 2 at a time and say, I'm going to put on this, not fake, totally, like not like, you know, Mr. Sunshine, but just try to be a little more upbeat and say, I got to mentally, intentionally be upbeat because I'm not working with people that are super upbeat right now. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. Ronna, how about you?
So your first question about the morale, I actually find it encouraging. You know, all we heard through COVID was about bad morale. So you know, maybe that means we're starting to move the needle in the right direction. And part of that is, as Dave alluded to, is figuring it out and finding new solutions. So I think we've all gotten a bit more nimble and a bit more, you know, agile as we've moved through this, and maybe we found a new way to be. So that's kind of encouraging.
And have you, whether in this role right now or just in your history, you know, your career, you know, had a role to play in morale? And if so, what things can we glean? I think any experience can be useful in how to improve morale. People are people.
Absolutely. I mean, I think every scenario kind of brings that to the table. I did a lot of client service over the years, and that inherently is what we do in school transportation is client service. So, you know, you're working with all different kinds of people and trying to find a happy medium. And I think it's so important to listen and, you know, even if you don't agree, you need to listen and understand where people are coming from to try to find that solution where it becomes a partnership rather than a contentious issue. So, you know, to me, it's all about just stepping back and kind of level setting things a little bit.
That's great.
Rick, I'd like to add, let's not forget, you know, let's not forget about talking about our supervisors. And I think that's probably the most of the people that are probably on this webinar right now are our supervisors. Yes, it's important for the, you know, for your staff and everything, but it's more important for the supervisor to feel that they're supported and network with your other peers, get into your different groups. We've started in Ohio. We've started some different things in different areas where just roundtable, just like we're doing here. You can do it at a local level. And it might be a night that you do meet other supervisors and you're meeting at a restaurant to go out. And yeah, it may turn into a complaint session. You're complaining, but at least you're putting ideas on the table to help your solutions. But it's very important for the supervisor to take care of themselves.
That's
Yeah,
a good
I think
idea.
that's a good point you're making, Bill. I think we don't talk about that enough because I know in New York we've got several openings where folks have retired and we're looking for people to fill those slots. I almost see that issue as serious as the stress on the folks below them, or that report to them, the drivers, the mechanics, etc. Because they kind of set the tone for the operation. And if there's nobody there, or you're just filling it with a body who probably isn't invested in it as well as they should be, it really creates a lot of issues. So I think that's an excellent point.
I mean, go ahead, Bill.
And what we found out, and that's one of the reasons, the position that I'm in right now, is we're out here to support the supervisors. And like in most states, probably, I mean, we've got approximately over about 600 supervisors in the state of Ohio. Okay, and every year we have a transition, about 250 new ones every year. And in Ohio, there is nothing before a supervisor becomes a supervisor. There's really nothing out there for them, okay, to do that. Yes, once they become a supervisor, then hopefully they hook up with a district or somebody that will mentor them and things and get them going. But that doesn't happen throughout the whole state, and that's what we're trying to do now here in Ohio. That's why the program that I'm in right now that we've created. They're kind of beta testing it, and hopefully years ago, I'm talking 25 years ago, we used to have every ESC used to have an individual that would handle transportation, and that's where we all went to. All the new supervisors would go there, and that's who they would hook up with. But in Ohio, they've taken that away, and now we're trying to bring that back. We may not get a person in every ESC, but if we can get 10 or 15 throughout the state, that'll be a big help to our supervisors.
That's an interesting point. We actually started a leadership development program here with our state association because we recognize that as well, that there's really no place a new supervisor can go to really learn about the business other than probably their state association, or if there's an entity like you speak of, and that's hardly fair, right? Because a lot of times people come up from within. And where do I go to learn this business? So that's a good discussion to have about how you can develop transportation leaders. What's the best ways to do that?
I think we're seeing this. We actually, Transfinder has created something now too called a master class, and it's this idea too about this being a career path. I think as time goes on, in 5-10 years from now or more, it's going to be more specialized, I think. And it's to see this as there is a place for me. And we've had other panelists on in the past about their stepping stones. Maybe they came in as an aide. That was like the low-hanging fruit to get them in, and then they maybe drove. Maybe they became a dispatcher and a router and started getting a feel for this and saying, I actually like what I'm doing. And then you can see their career path move up to become a transportation supervisor. So I think that it's a career. It is. I mean, I also call it a calling. I think the drivers are into calling to be transporting these kids, but I have asked Molly to call my cell phone. So I hope you don't mind. I'm going to just bring her on. It's not the greatest way to do this, but like you guys talked about, we are problem solvers, right? So Molly, first of all, I need you guys to tell me if you guys can hear her. Molly, is this Molly? I'm hoping I'm answering the right person. It's not a telemarketer.
Hi, Rick. Yes, it is Molly. Sorry, everyone. It's a little frustrating not getting in today.
It is okay. So you can, Dave, you can hear as well. Ronna, we're good?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
You are too valuable to not let your voice be heard. So I'm just gonna, I know you've been listening in. So, so first of all, I'll just ask you, I'm gonna back up a little bit so you can be part of the conversation. The poll results show that there is, in terms of morale, it's split between being fair and good, with 13% saying it was great, and like nobody said it was bad. So again, it's a small sample size, but does that surprise you? And just a takeaway there from you.
You know, it doesn't surprise me. I think that we have been asking our folks to do kind of more with less for quite some time. You know, there was really no respite for transportation folks during the pandemic. And then we immediately got back to trying to go back to normal school, so to speak, of what we're doing, with the driver shortage, with increased regulations and other things. So, you know, I was just in Texas over the weekend with the Texas TAPT, and, you know, what impresses me the most about our industry is the professionals in it. Like, these are incredible men and women who really care about what they do. What I did see on some is there's just a little frustration, and I think that they're trying to do more with less. And I also think that they are yes people. They are the ones that try to come through for everyone. So I think looking at self-care and trying to make sure that they're okay and that they're being, you know, I think it's in any organization. When people get used to doing well, you get more expected of you. And sometimes administrators that might be supervising don't recognize the toll that it's taking on their team.
Good points. And you touched on something about stress, and I have that as one of my bullet points here. So I do want to get to that, adjusting to stress on leadership and self-care. That's what you had mentioned. I do want to get to that. I wanted to get your thoughts on also, do you have any insights on how to improve morale?
Well, you know, I think morale really starts with the culture of the organization. And I think, you know, I am very blessed that in my education career, I worked for some amazing superintendents and with some amazing cabinets, executive staffs. And I always felt sort of honored to be a part of those teams because they were so excellent. And one of the things that I know is that the leader sets the tone. And whether that's the superintendent or the chief business official or the director of transportation, but morale all starts with that leadership. People are looking at the leaders and taking cues from them. And so I think one of the biggest ways that we improve morale is by having positive, affirming leaders who really show authentic care for their people, know their names, know something about them, speak with them. It's not just about the business. One of my mentors taught me years ago this saying that I really love. It's how we do business may be as important as the business we do. And I think as leaders, how you carry yourself, if you're down, stressed, bored, upset, unhappy, that just conveys right to your folks. So I do think it starts at the top with that. And I also think that, you know, our folks today, people really want authentic connections. So it's not enough to put out pizza for everybody with a note or just welcome. You need to be there with them. You need to be eating with them, so to speak, having conversations. It's about being in person in leadership. And I think that's one of the best ways to build morale, is to be the kind of leader that people want to follow.
That's great. Anybody want to add to that? I saw some nodding heads.
I'll jump on. I agree in total. I would say though that you know, the school transportation industry has done more with less for years and years and years. I used to hear that back in the 1980s, but I think things have changed significantly in the past you know, 3 or 4 years. You know, again, the student management issues have increased, so the skill set needed to manage that needs to change. You know, here in New York, we're transitioning our school bus fleets under mandate to electric buses, which is a huge lift. in terms of learning that technology and figuring out how to do it. And we're doing all that with fewer drivers. So, you know, those are I think the stressors and the frustration, and every state, every area has got, you know, their own issues they're dealing with. But to Molly's point, it all comes down to how the leadership manages that. And I can't agree with her more in terms of, you know, lead by example, you know.
Is there also a role, like you made me think, David, as you were just talking about, and I don't know how to do this, and maybe someone has some insights on this, not carrying all as a transportation supervisor, carrying all that burden on your shoulders. Is there a way, an appropriate way? Do you let the superintendent know, or the school board, not maybe in a public forum, that may or may not be the right place, but so that they know, hey, look, I need a stress release valve implanted here. I just need, is there a place to let it get outside of the transportation office and approach your leadership, or does that show weakness? I don't know if anybody who's listening on, by the way, attendees, feel free to give us your insights on this as well, that I don't want to let anybody know, because then they might say, oh, I guess you can't handle the job, we'll look for somebody else, and maybe there's some concern about that. Or is it appropriate to say, and you got to kind of judge that? I don't know, I don't want to go too long. Thoughts on that? Ronna, you look like you're going to say something.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really important for the health of the organization for that to be recognized. If you bury it under the carpet and you move jobs, the organization doesn't understand all the duties that have been undertaken. I mean, you really do have to manage up and manage down and around the 360 view, because that ensures the health of the organization. And if your leadership or those above you don't realize all the tasks you're taking on, that doesn't work. So
is there a way to do that?
I think it's communication. I think it's sitting down and having those honest conversations. It's stepping back and saying, you know, here's what I have on my plate. What are you envisioning my priorities to be? They may not realize you've taken on some things. There may be some other solutions within the organization. Nobody knows unless you have those conversations.
I got Molly here, and then I think the others want to talk about it. I want to make sure. Molly, go ahead.
You know, I totally agree with Ronna on this, and I think, you know, I think it's a private discussion that you need to have with your supervisor or your CBO, chief business official, or your superintendent. And I do think you need to be politically correct about it. And when you're sharing your concerns, it needs to be fact-based. Here's the number of hours I'm working. Here's what our issues here. Here's the number of routes that I'm personally having to drive because of the shortage. I also think a lot of the stress has to do with how we deal with problems, whether it's a student management issue, whether it's a parent confrontation, whether it's an accident. You know, how your supervisors, the people above you, including your school board, you know, do they trust that you are doing the very best that you can? And, you know, it's like, I have one of our members was sharing with me recently that there was an issue in their district, and the superintendent was very angry over something that happened that got some bad publicity. It had nothing to do with the transportation director. They were responding to a situation that happened. And so I think it's having relationships far enough in advance where we give each other the benefit of the doubt, and we talk about how we problem solve. Because, you know, it's like you're only as good as your last issue, perhaps, and you may be doing great, and then there's an incident, and all of a sudden you're on the firing line, and the stress of those things. You know, our members, it's not just about doing the right thing. It's about caring deeply about the kids and the safety of what we're doing and their drivers and the school district. And so for them, it is a very personal thing. So I do think that you have to be politically correct in sharing your stress, and it needs to be very fact-based. But I also think we need to look at what is the root cause of those stressors. Is it incidents that are happening? Is it some kind of an accident? Because I often think that, I know when I am personally stressed, I often try to look and examine it and say, what's the root of this? Is this my work? Is it my personal life? Is it my health? What is it that's causing it?
Very good. I like the fact-based. You know, we talk about this a lot. Tony really wants data. There is data that's out there that can make your point too. Like you talked about, I'm driving X number of more. I'm getting pulled off of one assignment because of the driver shortage, for instance. And then you also talked about the symptoms that can create to morale issues, like the ones I have on these bullet points here, you know, driver shortage, mechanic shortage, retirements, and the like. Dave, you had a smile on your face. So I want to, you remember, I'm like an auctioneer, and if I see you twitch at all, I'm going to call on you.
No, I think it comes down to, as leaders, how you react to those challenges that come your way. And leaders have to be, you know, cool-headed and calm, and you know, project confidence, and you know, collect the data, share the communications with both ways, up and down. But that's just kind of part of the job, and find ways to manage that stress and frustration, because it's really part of the job. I mean, I think it's more serious today, probably because of some of the things we've talked about. But school transportation has never been an easy business. You know, it's always been a challenging business to some degree, and transportation people have managed that through years very successfully. And I think you said it earlier, people get very passionate about this work, and very committed to it, and they figure out a way to do it. And that's the key to this, I think.
I want to do a quick, because it's sometimes these webinars go so fast to me. I want to make sure I get to the point about your leadership style and how you've adapted, how you've changed. You know, we have that SWOT analysis there, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and that can go for your organization. It can go for you in your own role. How would you say you've adapted, and also with an eye toward things that people can take away that maybe they can implement too, how you've improved? Or I did this course, I did, you know, I started reading this or whatever. I'm just going to open it up to anybody about how you've changed for the better, obviously, and what maybe others can do as well.
I'll jump in. I think it's really important to think about how you want to be treated and then operate in that manner. To me, it's really important to manage up, but also to manage down. And with that means no surprises. If there is something coming up, you are going to hear about it from me before you hear about it anywhere else. And we're going to talk through a plan, and we're going to figure it out together. I don't operate in a silo. I work with a team both ways, with the board, but also with staff and with the association. And that's really important because it takes everything into consideration, and then we work together as a team. And to me, that's critical. I mean, it has to work that way, or we're not going to succeed.
Collaborative approach. Very good. Anybody else?
When it comes to drivers, I try to give them as much information as possible, because one thing with transportation, the book's already been written. We have to follow all these rules and regulations, starting from federal, down to state, down to local. So everything is written already for us. It's just getting the information to them, because many times the drivers think I'm just creating something, I'm making something up, okay? And it's like, no, I'm not making something up. I'm just following what legislation has already put in place for us, that we have to go. Now, you know, granted, we all have our department handbooks and things like that, you know, just for each department, but I try to educate the drivers and give them the materials, so they know where all these rules come from.
That's good. Like why we're doing what we're doing. You know, I think that communication, it always comes down to communication, right, Dave? I mean, how many times have we talked about communication? And so letting people know that this is not just, you know, your idea, but there's a mandate here, or even if there's been a change, here's why we made this change, because of this incident that happened or something like that. Molly, I think you were getting ready to say something.
You know, I think one of the biggest misconceptions about communication is that everybody does it well, and we very seldom look at ourselves to see how we communicate and what we do, because our communication styles are so different. You know, I think I've been working my entire career on leadership, and that I've always been fascinated by autobiographies, biographies, by different theories of leadership, etc. That was all of my graduate school work, was in the area of leadership. because I've always been looking at role models of what creates a successful leader. And communication is one of the key issues of it. And it's being able to understand what your weaknesses are as well as your strengths, because I think sometimes we get used to working on our strengths and we've kind of put our weaknesses under the rug. So, you know, some people consider things like communication or emotional intelligence or leadership, they think of them as a soft skill. And I don't think of them as soft skills. I think of them as really necessary skills. And, you know, no matter how fabulous your technical skills are, if you cannot communicate and work with people, you get very limited in what you can do. And so I think in most organizations, our folks, our transportation people probably have access to the least amount of professional development of anyone. And I think that's why the programs that our state affiliates put on, that NAPT does, that Ronna and NSTA and everyone puts on are so important, because it allows our folks to get the information they need and to become a better leader.
That's great. It is. That's a really good point, is that we don't see ourselves and those weaknesses. It's not as apparent to us as it is to others. You know, even just asking other people that you trust, hey, are there some areas that you can see improvement on, or did I communicate that well? I try to do that more myself. That's repetitive, more myself. But anyway, I try to do that as well and say, am I making myself clear? That may not be the way I say it, because that sounds like authoritative. But now, do you understand what I'm trying to say here? I might say something like that. Do you have any questions? Those kind of things. Because sometimes I think I can sometimes go from 1 to 3. 2 seems obvious to me, and you do need to connect the dots sometimes with people, just because of the way I didn't quite see that clearly. Even I've been married for 31 years, and my wife's like, she lost me on something, or I lost her on something, because I'm already just jumping into the next thing. Dave, you got a smirk on your face this time. I don't know if it's a smile or a smirk, but
you got to stop putting me on after Molly, because she makes me think too much. I think that whole idea of we think we're great communicators resonates with me. I remember when my first job as a supervisor, I was 24 years old, and I thought I was the best communicator and probably knew everything there was to know. And now, a few years later, I won't tell you how many, I think back on that, and it almost is scary, because I'm learning every day now. I mean, every day I'm around people who are very good at what they do, and you pick up little tidbits from these people, and you say, hey, you know something, that's a great skill, or that's a great piece of knowledge that I need to think about. And in terms of the soft skills, I can name a few transportation supervisors, and I won't do that online here, but who are excellent supervisors, and they will tell you that they don't know all the laws. They're not good writers, but they have these excellent communication and soft skills that causes them to be very successful in their districts. And when you go visit their districts, they're like superstars. Their superintendents think they're, you know, doing this great job, which they are. Because their skills in terms of dealing with their people and their communities are so strong that they just stand out. So you know, that is so important, the soft skill piece, and we probably don't think about that enough. And
you said that, Dave, you made me think of something. We all know the expression bedside manner, a doctor who has a good bedside manner, or, you know, and somebody say, I don't mind if he has a bad bedside manner, as he can fix. I had an ACL. Actually, I had a great doctor who fixed my knee. But let's just say he had a terrible bedside manner, but he was an awesome doctor. All I really care about is my knee. But, you know, a bedside manner it really is good to have it. I mean, he was wonderful, made me feel at peace. I felt like he was very good at what he did, which he was. So I think about the bedside manner, and that is valuable. That is, you are missing a piece of it if you, well, I'm an all-star whatever, but just take me or leave me. But you know what I mean? I think there is something to be said for a good bedside manner or good soft skills, which I think Molly was trying to get us to not use soft skills anymore, which I appreciate, Molly, because that's what I always think I had decent skills at. I don't know, you guys can be the judge of that, but I always felt like soft kind of weakens the value of it because you're like, oh, it's mushy.
Yeah, I do. And, you know, one of the things I also, you know, when you really study leaders, the most successful long-term leaders, not just successful for themselves, but successful in the organizations that they build and that they lead, they are people who build other leaders, and they're people that, you know, you want to follow them, you trust them with your career or with the things you're doing. And so I do think soft skills is a bit of a misnomer for it. But I think if you look at successful people and successful organizations, you see that those issues that come under emotional intelligence, which are communication and everything from behavior and attitudes and the like, that those really are keys to success.
That's great. I'm going to skip down because we have had a lot of webinars on recruitment and on just dealing with change in the office. We would get to them, great. But I kind of want to move on to the adjusting to stress on leadership. And you talked about self-care, Molly. I'm going to go down the line. I will get to you, Molly, I promise, because you kind of set the table. But if you don't mind, I'm going to go to Bill and Ronna and Dave as well to tell me about, just because I think the people we have on right now, like you said, Dave, are most likely transportation supervisors. You know, they're in leadership roles, or maybe they want to go into those leadership roles, and maybe they're saying, maybe I don't want that job because I see how stressful my boss is. You know, are there some tools, some suggestions to adjust to that stress? We talked a little bit about letting your leadership know, letting the superintendent know in an appropriate way. You know, fact-driven, I think, is a good one. Are there other things that help you to adjust to the stress that a leader has? And I'll start with you, Bill, and go to Ronna and David, and then Molly close that piece up.
Well, last year was a very, very rough year for me personally, and at work too. So I hit that brick wall that many of you will in this industry will hear. We know a driver, they hit that brick wall, they'll come in and say, you know what, I'm retiring tomorrow, I'm out of here. Okay. And I hit that myself last year because of some things. But how I worked through it was I had to schedule my time, and then I had to make sure I scheduled time that was not work related. Okay. Many of you that know me, and we've talked before on here, I mean, I was in bed at 9, I was up at 2 in the morning. Okay. And then from 2 in the morning till 9 at night, it was strictly work. Okay. And that was 7 days a week that I was doing that. So, and it finally caught up with me. So what I did was I had to schedule time, and that's when the cell phone goes off. That's when the computer, you know, you're not on the computer. And for me, this it requires work, but it's very relaxing. Cutting grass. I love cutting grass. Just being outdoors, and I could ride on a mower for hours and hours, put a set of headphones on and have music playing, and I don't want, it's sad to admit, I've actually fallen asleep riding the mower because it's so relaxing. It's so relaxing to me. But of course, once you fall asleep and once you fall off, you know, it shuts off automatically. There's safety devices involved. So, but that's how I relax. But I actually had to set time out into my schedule, and I had to put it in my calendar. You know, it's like, listen, this is my downtime.
That's great. You know, we actually had a webinar, a panelist in the past who said his wife made him give her his cell phone Friday after work and would not get it back until, I think she let him have it back Sunday evening. But that was his thing. And I can tell you, up where we are in upstate New York, you probably have heard of the Adirondacks. Well, there's parts of the Adirondacks that have zero cell service. And I think some people want it never to have cell service, so they always have a built-in excuse. I'm sorry, I'm out of pocket. You're not going to be able to reach me because I'm in the Adirondacks, you know. So they almost like get a built-in, like, excuse to not be tied. So anyway, that's a good picture there too, Bill, of you falling asleep on the riding lawnmower. Ronna, how about you, adjusting to that stress?
So I completely agree with everything Bill said, minus the falling off the mower. You really do have to have that work-life balance and have to protect your time, and whatever it takes to do that is critical. But one of the things that I want to add to the equation is careful planning. I'm a detailed person. I spend a lot of time kind of projecting out in terms of what's next, what are we looking for, what's next week, what's next month, what's 3 months from now type stuff. So it's careful planning, but that really does eliminate that surprise or, oh, I forgot about, or that crunch time getting ready for something. We have plenty of time to prepare if we're careful, and I really do try to kind of follow that path.
Very good. That's great. Yeah, it is amazing too when you prepare and plan for things. That does reduce a certain amount of stress. If I leave for an event that I have to be there and that I have to hit all green lights all the way, I created stress for myself. If I
Right.
built in 10 minutes, then when there's a broken down car or whatever, I'm not. So how much stress do I put on because of my own lack of planning, for instance, like you said, Ronna? Very good.
Exactly.
David.
Two excellent points from both. I will add that I think networking with your industry colleagues is huge, and be it at your local chapter level or just informally with your neighbor, your state association, your national associations. I think the reason that's important is because there's nowhere else you can go to really talk about and to share the stress and the issues that you experience in the school transportation business. You can talk to your superintendent, and you should talk to your business official. You should do that as well. But at the end of the day, they really don't get it like someone else in the yellow bus business, because it's such a unique business. It's not like the transit business. It's not like the taxi business. It's not like the trucking business. It's a very unique business, and I think it's very important to be involved with your associations, your chapters, whomever, who understand the yellow bus business. And I think not only do you learn, but I think you also are able to release some of that stress and at least understand you're not in it alone.
Very good. And Molly, you got to follow Dave for a change.
Yeah, sorry, I probably talked too much.
No.
Years ago, someone told me that if you're in the part of school business that isn't in the classroom, it's hard for people to understand somewhat of what we do. And one of the things that I have found is that when we are with people that we feel are our tribes, the people that understand us and get us and understand the stresses that you're feeling and the day-to-day realities, that there's something about being with people who understand what your life is like. And I do think that that's what our professional associations can do for us. And I know New York is getting ready to have their big conference in a week. And I know that that will be the tribal gathering in New York State for the transportation folks to come together. And I do think that it releases tension, it expands our horizon, it allows us to make connections, it helps us problem solve. So that whole part of being with like-minded people and being with other people who truly understand what you're going through is essential. And Dave's absolutely right. Your superintendent or your chief business official, they're juggling a lot of different balls in the air, and they know something about a lot of them, but they are not in our shoes. And so making sure that we have the leadership to just sort of take care of ourselves and to try to find those connections for us, I think is really important. And I think webinars like this are another way. It's a way during our workday to take a moment to listen to folks and see if we can reset or rethink or expand our horizons. So, I think it's all about constantly trying to become better versions of ourselves.
Oh, I like that. That's good.
I would like, Rick, I'd like to add too. This morning I had a meeting with a superintendent to discuss about the transportation department, and it was encouraging for him to tell me the only reason they're actually calling me in to look at their department was to offer support to their supervisor. And where they got that from was they were having a meeting with the supervisor. They were having department meetings, and the supervisor did express some concerns of what's going on with the department, you know. And so listening to what we're just talking about, and now I'm thinking back about that meeting this morning. I give that superintendent a lot of credit. He was actually listening to the superintendent, or listening to the supervisor, and he's reaching out to give that supervisor support. So I will be making connections with them probably tomorrow, and probably meet with them on Wednesday, probably next week.
Not to be too self-promotional, but maybe those of you, you know, maybe this is something that you forward them a link to today's webinar to your supervisors, your superintendents. Let them hear a little bit about, because we kind of dealt with some pretty hard issues, I think, today, and maybe just get a glimpse of, without it coming from you. They can just, hey, you might want to listen to this. There's some good points here. I don't know, Molly, is that a bad idea? Is that okay? What do you think?
Yeah. I don't think it's a bad idea. You know, I just think I think probably one of the hardest jobs in the world today is being a successful superintendent. If you look at the turnover rates of superintendents, it's continuing to be at an all-time high. And I follow quite a few news outlets about that and looking at what's happening. So, you know, I think one of the things that we always have to do is we always have to sort of see what is our timing like, what is our, you know, what's on their plate at this point in time. And, you know, the better we are at what I call leading up, that means knowing what our supervisors need and want, I think the more successful we can be, because I think superintendents are in an incredible fishbowl, and the pressures are not changing at all. They're just intensifying. So we need to kind of be aware of that as well. And, you know, sometimes I think it's so easy that we see our piece of the pie and we see what's going on, and we fail to see what else is happening around us. And so I think another part of leadership is knowing that it isn't just about us, that we are a part of the puzzle, but trying to understand how we can support each other.
That's a good point too. Yesterday there was a perfect game pitched by the New York Yankees. I'm a Mets fan, but it's still exciting. It's been 11 years since a perfect game. And when he was interviewed after the game, I mean, it was kind of a fluster, so he may not have thought of it. But I thought his first response would be like, this is a team win, because you don't get a perfect game. There were a lot of catches in the outfield, a lot of great grounders that were, you know, a lot of great plays. Perfect game isn't just a pitcher. So I think, to your point, Molly, realizing your piece of the puzzle, but also getting an understanding that you're one piece of a bigger picture is a really good. So it's picking your moments as well when you do bring up some of these issues. So that's an excellent point. I'm going to do this very quickly because we're kind of running out of time. We got 2 minutes, but I'm going to ask for just a one-liner kind of quick takeaway about, you know, what you want somebody who was on this webinar to, who was listening here, to take back to their office. I'm going to start with you, Molly, and then I'll go to Bill, Ronna, Dave. I know how much you love being the last guy, the anchor, to close it up. So you can't say what they said. You got to come up with your own. Yeah. Molly, quick takeaway.
Start with yourself first. Become the best leader that you can be, and know who you are.
Very good. Bill.
I agree with Molly, and she took mine. And so I will say, make sure network together with other peers, and to open up that communication, because we're all in the same boat and we're trying to achieve the same thing, and just get that help from everybody else.
Very good. Ronna.
Don't forget the big picture.
Excellent.
Good
and
one.
David.
I'm going to speak to a little bit of what Molly said. Proud to be part of the tribe, and I think most school transportation people are as well, and that's why I think we're so successful.
Excellent. Excellent. Bridget, can you move to the next slide for me? We talk about teamwork a lot, and Bridget is an awesome team member here at Transfinder, so I'm super grateful for her. Just a quick reminder, we love to hear stories. Again, These are not just Transfinder clients. Wish they all were, but we want to get the best of the best insights on issues, how you are successful, things that you've learned, whatever that may be. You may be a panelist, you may be on a white paper, or both, whatever it may be. So if you have any thoughts on for best practices, please send them to mystory@transfinder.com, and I promise you we will follow up with you on that. We're going to skip August. August is a tough month. Just getting ready for the opening of the new school year. So we debated it and decided let's just take the month off. And so we'll be back at the very last date you can pretty much get in September, September 28th. And we have some topics in mind, but I'll be sharing that later down the road. But for now, I just want to thank everybody for joining us today, for the insights you gave, and look forward to seeing you all back in September. Hope you all have a great summer, getting ready for the new school year. I want to thank our panelists, want to thank our attendees, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
Take care.